Hi, I'm Louise Ashley. I'd like you to know a little bit about my life. I was born December 29, 1919, to Anna and Lorenzo Ashley, in Waycross, Georgia. My father was born a few years after slavery, and his parents were enslaved. He didn't get a chance to know his parents very well, because they were sold when he was very young. So, he grew up being buck wild, so he was nicknamed Buck. My parents were married on December 24, 1914. They were each other's Christmas presents. My mother Anna was born, Anna Johnson, to Solomon and Melissa Johnson. She was the only girl, and she had 8 brothers. Her folks were sharecroppers, just like most black folks back then. Slavery was over, and the plantation owners had to find a way to get their crops to the train so that the product would make it to the market. I had 3 sisters and 1 brother. I was the middle child. Cora Lee was the eldest, then Catherine. Then there was me, my only brother Bobby, and my little sister Anna, who was named after our mother. My father worked for different people, on their farms. World War I was over and a lot of people's husbands and sons were killed. So, they needed help on the farms. Waycross, Georgia is a railroad town. Let me tell you a little about Waycross, Georgia. Have you ever heard of the Okefenokee Swamp? That's Waycross. But let me tell you about how it was named and what kind of town it was. Conflicting tales exist concerning the naming of Waycross, Georgia, but almost all center on the railroad. One recounts a meeting between Dr. Daniel Lott, one of our founders, Major Henry Haynes, superintendent of the Savannah Railroad. Others attribute the name to Reverend W. H. Thomas, a beloved member of the early Waycross community, who contends it was named the Way of the Cross. Here is a sad story about me and our family. My father was thinking about going into the military. But that could have been the worst thing that could happen to a little girl. My mother. She got really sick, and on December 15, 1925, my mother died. I was only 6 years old at the time, but it hurt, like no other kind of hurt. Something I have never felt before. We all cried and cried. My daddy tried to be strong for us, but he cried too. Christmas was 10 days later. Dad tried to give us some kind of Christmas. Santa brought me a Raggedy Ann doll, and I hated Raggedy Ann. For the rest of my life Raggedy Ann reminded me of my mother dying. I found out that Cora Lee was not my dad's. It turns out she had a different father. Cora's real dad said that he would take care of his little girl. So, he came and took her with him. From then on we would see her every once in a while, but we didn't see her very often. My father decided that, because we lived in the country, and he had 3 little girls and a young son, so that he could protect us, we would all sharecrop. That way, everybody could stick together. Farmers would take their crops by train, and ship them all over America. I hated those fields. There were snakes and spiders, skunks, possums, rabbits, squirrels, and all kinds of animals in those fields. Every once in a while Dad would hop a freight train rail car, and be gone 2 or 3 days. We learned that if there was a snake, we would kill it. Some of them were poisonous. Now a possum, rabbit, or squirrel. We would kill it, skin it, cooked it, and eat it. We learned to take care of ourselves when it was just us at home. Dad taught us well. We didn't go to school much, because we had to work. But we all learned to read and write anyway. After Mom died, Catherine and I took care of Bobby. And Ann. I would cook, Catherine would bring in the meat and vegetables. There were always chickens running around. So, we didn't starve. One night at this nightclub she met this big Navy man, and she fell head over heels in love with him. His name was Harry Smith. His mother had just died, and he had also just joined the Navy. He was a cook on the USS Missouri. Catherine was really good at being somebody's mama. she was just 5 feet 4 inches, about 100 pounds, and he was 6 feet 6 inches and weighed 285 pounds. She felt safe with him. After World War II, they sent him to San Diego, California, to get ready for discharge. I went to California to live with Catherine and May Francis until he got out. In San Diego, we were staying in a small mobile home. It was tight, but we made it work. When Harry got out of the Navy, we moved to a rooming house in Los Angeles, on Baxter Street. Soon Smitty. That's what I called Harry. He got a deal to open up a restaurant in the Dunbar Hotel in downtown LA. He and I would cook. Catherine would be the waitress. We had it going on. There was this smooth-talking brother, who had a shoe shine booth in the lobby, and he would say something nice to me every day. I needed to hear that, because I had met this brother, let's just say, Mr. Simpkins. We had a child named Alicia, and to make a long story short, let's just say, we broke up. And I needed someone who was nice to me. So, I agreed to go out with Mr. Shoe Shine. He picked me up wearing a black suit, that had to be tailor-made, and some black Stacy Adams that shined like they were patent leather. You can see your face in the toe. He was driving a black Studebaker that shined as his shoes did. I could comb my hair while looking at the side door. And he opened the door for me and treated me like a queen. I had the best time of my life. I had a wonderful time. He treated me better than I had ever been treated before. He made good tips shoe shining, but he also had a side hustle. He had this short jockey customer, a midge T, who would give him tips on what horse was going to win. All the horse betting people would come to get their shoes shown and give him a good tip. For horse racing tip. He would take me dancing, and I never saw anybody dance that good before. Before I knew it, we were hooked up, and having children. I had 5 children with him. Stephen, Stanley, Sherman, Sydney, and Sylvester, and I already had Alicia. Before I knew it, I had 6 children. We have more grandchildren than I can count. With Stephen and his beautiful lady Stephanie, we have Stephen Jr. and George. He doesn't know it, but he's just like his grandfather. He calls himself Giorgio. Then there's Darnell. They had one beautiful daughter, Laquita and Delane. Stanley and his lady, they had, well, we called her Shawanda, but her name is Shalissa, and her brother Stanley Jr., and then Stanley had Christopher. I won't tell you why, but I raised Shalissa and Stanley Jr. They are my children. Mine. You hear me? Mine. Sherman had 2 children. Antoine, and the other we call Sherman Jr. They all look just like him. Sydney had no children, but Sylvester had, Marque. Sylvester. Winston Jr. Raylene Winston, and Lanessa. And my daughter Alicia had one beautiful daughter, named Angela Williams. Family. We will always be with you forever. If you need us, close your eyes, and make a pyramid, with your pointing fingers and thumbs, and talk to us. Here. What we say is the good and right thing to do. We love you, family. Take care of each other.